Hi everyone, today we're going to be looking at a model that I've 3D printed and we're going to be painting it. The resin I've used is the Anycubic Eco Resin. Slightly longer layer curing times than what I'm used to using. The model's come out pretty good. It's a Stug 3, I think. I found it on Thingiverse. It's by a chap called Tiger Ace 1945. I'll put the link in the description. He makes 1:100 scale models. I've just scaled up to 28mm scale, which I worked out using maths is about 178%. And it's come out alright. There's a couple of rough areas, a little bit of lining. The model comes in two pieces. It's the main part and this piece of the track that I broke off while I was taking off the supports because I was being a bit clumsy there. But if you do it normally, it's a one-piece model. I possibly should have followed it, but I don't know, it's got a decent weight to it. Kind of satisfying. So I'm going to prime that, and then we're going to go ahead and paint it. So the Stug's now been primed with grey cere spray paint. It's a little bit of a lighter grey than it's going to be, but that's fine. I've noticed while watching back what I recorded last that I've actually left a bunch of the little supports in some of the wheels, so I'm going to tidy those up and then just paint a little bit of grey cere over where they were, just to tidy them up. And hopefully I won't break it because the resin is a little bit brittle when compared to plastic or, say, Forge World's resin with clippers and a hobby knife and a file. You should be alright as long as you're careful, I say, whilst applying probably too much force. I'm probably seeing mostly the underside of the tank there that's got a bunch of ugly marks on it, but I'm not going to fret too much about those since if all goes well, you're not going to be seeing much of the underside of this tank anyway. One thing that I should have mentioned earlier that you definitely want to remember to do is to take a little bit of super glue and glue back on this little front piece of the track guard that you snapped off whilst you were being a bit overzealous removing the print supports earlier. I did say this was a two-piece model, didn't I? I lied, it's a three-piece model now. There you go. Dread to think what would have happened if I'd printed one of the versions with the long barrel. There's already a little bit of a chip at the front of that barrel. Try and fix that later. Anyway, great tutorial video so far. I hope you're following everything I'm doing to the letter. Right, so I fixed that little bit at the end of the barrel with some green stuff. It might turn out a little bit rough, but we can always smooth it. And I'm actually going to use Dawnstone for the base because the camo should be a little bit of a darker grey. That should go right over the top of the grey cere without any problems. Obviously thin it down a little bit so it gets properly into all the cracks and crevices. Yada yada, 2 thin coats, you know the drill by now. Yeah, it looks okay. We'll just smooth it down later. There's still a little bit of a visible line where I glued that bit back on, so I'm going to have to just sand that a little more and then redo the primer. As you can see, we've got this nice fetching green front track guard here. That's liquid green stuff because that crack from the bit that I broke is proving to be a real pain. So just trying to get that all smoothed out and buffed out. Trying to break it any more than I already have. Okay, so we've managed to get a fairly decent even coat of Dawnstone all over the Stug, if we're not looking at bits of it too closely. And then I'm going to, probably unwisely, slap Nuln Oil over the whole thing. That'll darken our grey down a little bit more. I can highlight it up a little bit from that. And of course, at this stage, it will show up any weird little print artifacts that I still haven't managed to catch. So that'll be a nice little joy to look forward to. Like this little thing behind the box here. Gonna need to take that off and clean that up. It's fine, it's good, we're having fun. So what you need to do now is just get a metal arm thing to attach to your desk so you can hold your phone in place while you're painting. And then you can move on to the wild and probably terrible idea of dry brushing a tank. Yeah, so I'm going to dry brush the Dawnstone back on Try and some of the blotchiness that we've got on some of the bigger armour panels. Move it so you can see what I'm doing. You know what I'm thinking? I've got some sponge. I might try and give that a whirl. Just sponge dry brush or sponge some Dawnstone back on some of the big flat bits. Yeah, you know what? Let's do that. Be a little bit heavy on the paint. Yeah, sponge is giving it a little bit of a rough texture. It'd be good for like I've got a Soviet tank I'm working on, so I could do something like this for, because they had that sort of the rough, uneven looking, like the whitewash camouflage, right? Where that wasn't like a perfectly smooth coat of white, that was kind of speckly, so I'm thinking this would be good for that. Maybe not so good for this grey. Doesn't look terrible. Yeah, I do want this side panel to be a bit... Did I make a joke about how the bottom of this tank looks like the surface of the moon yet? I don't know, I'm recording these a little bit far apart, so you might have just got the same gag twice. If you did, you're welcome. I think I need to tighten one of the screws on my little camera arm there. It's doing its own thing sometimes. I'm going to try and get in a couple of slightly more deliberate highlights with what am I using? Administratum Grey. That's right away. It's looking quite harsh. So I'm not sure about this, but I've started, so I'll continue. This isn't for anything specific anyway, I'm just trying things out, so if it comes out less than perfect, that's fine. I say that, most of my stuff is fairly south of perfect anyway, but it's fine, you know, it's fine. Perfect is not the aim. We're just going with, if it comes out looking fairly decent, I'll be happy with that. I like that I'm sounding like a bootleg Bob Ross whilst doing highlights on a World War II tank. Not a tank, technically. Who cares? We're all friends here. Somebody cares. Somebody's probably going to unfollow me for calling a Stug a tank, and I'll be down to, what, single figures? Something I've been thinking about actually with the edge highlights, I don't know if it's going to be useful to anyone, is I'm doing it almost like a very targeted dry brush. Like I'm not loading my brush with paint, I'm actually wiping most of it off and then just, let me see if I can actually get that in focus, but I'm almost sort of dry brushing a little bit of pigment on with the edge of the brush. Maybe this is like really evident to other people, maybe this is how everyone's been doing it the whole time, but I thought it'd be useful to point out, just in case anybody else was thinking about it. I'm really trying to fuss around with the arm stand thing at the moment to find the best position so that I'm not in my own light so much for the recording, and also so that I can get both my arms around, see what I'm doing, so you can see what I'm doing, for it to be visible on the camera, if that makes sense. Anyway, what I'm doing right here, right now, I'm doing the treads. I'm also doing, there's various tools and stuff stashed on the top, so I'm going to do them too. Oh, I forgot to mention, but for that bit I just used Rhinox hide. And then I'm going to look up what sort of colour I should be painting these wheel doodads inside the treads. They're called track wheels, road wheels, something like that. Because either they should be grey like the tank, or they should be some sort of metal colour. I'm going to have to put this thing down upside down once I've finished painting it, otherwise I'll get brown all over my desk. Okay, so I've given the brown areas a little highlight of Mornfang brown, just dry brushed it on the treads, given a little highlight on the wood bits on the stowage there. Now the road wheels, I do need to paint the edges of these black. I think the actual wheel itself might be the same grey camouflage colour as the tank, so I'll have a little bit more of a look around on that, and then if that's the case I'll just fix that up. These are fiddly little things to paint. Actually they're not that bad. Try and get that in focus. So I think this thing too. This one probably not, I suspect, because it's got like gear teeth. That might just be metal rather than whatever's around the rim of these. Okay, here's how we're looking so far. It's time for the magic. Time for the Agrax. I'm going to do everything that I did brown. Get this all over the treads. Also going to do some on the kit on top. Might do a little bit in some of the recesses on the grey, just to give me some like start to do some mud and grime, but I'm definitely going to switch to a smaller brush for that. And here we go, just going to target a few of the little grooves and crevices. A little bit of a recess shade Agrex down there. Already done a little bit at the front there. Don't know if you can see that. I'm not going to do it in all the grooves, just some of the more noticeable, significant ones. And of course I'm just going to get the Agrex over the brown bits of these tools and gear up here. Alright, so after looking into it a bit, turns out that the road wheels here should be commonly just the same colour as whatever the rest of the tank's camouflage is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slap a coat of Black Templar contrast on them, because that's actually really useful for base coating tricky areas like this that have got lots of like deep recess detail. And I'm going to want as little of the light grey, well, I don't want any of the light grey showing, so if I just slap Black Templar all over it, that should get rid of all of that, and then I can just do the same grey stages on those as I did on the rest of the tank. Not a tank. Self-propelled gun. You know, we're all friends here, it's fine, it's fine. What I'm doing now is, now that the road wheels are finally done, in the same colour as the hull, I'm just dry brushing a little bit of Steel Legion drab on the treads for a little bit of like mud, weathering, stuff like that. I can be a bit messy with this, it's actually good if it gets on the tread guards as well, because, you know, that's a bit realistic looking. Try and get the camera to focus on that, that's quite nice actually. I like how that looks. Do a little bit in the back here as well. I'm going to go back to my sponge now and just try and get a little bit of paint chipping on there. I'm using a Bed and Black for this. I thought about using Rhinox hide maybe. That could also work. Just going to try and get a little bit on the edges. I don't want to go too overboard with this, otherwise it's just going to look like it's been burnt to a crisp. Maybe a little bit on there. Try and get it to focus again. Don't really want to destroy all of my edge highlighting. Maybe just a little bit back here as well. So I think that's looking pretty decent now. Might hit it with some matte varnish just to dull down the shine a bit. If I had any like logos or stencils or other decals, I'd put those on, but I've got exactly nothing for historicals in that department, and it'd be weird putting Space Marine decals on it. So I'm not going to do that. I think I am going to do a little bit of lead belcher on some of these tools and stuff, and then just hit that with a null wash afterwards, otherwise they're going to be way too shiny. I don't know what this little doodad is. I'm sure it's something vitally important. I'm sure now that I've painted it silver, it's definitely meant to be brown, but hey ho. Also, we've got some sort of cable thing going on around here. I'm going to look up what this is. I'm going to paint it as ever metal cable, and I'm going to look it up, find out that I'm wrong, and repaint it something else. It's either going to be a cable or like a rope, isn't it? And with that, I'm going to call the Stug pretty much done. Like I said, it could do with some more insignia and numbers and such if you've got things like that to hand. I don't, and I'm not going to go out and buy German vehicle decals just for this. This was a little casual side project, as you may be able to tell by the very laid back tone of this video. I've got a few more vehicles that I want to print out and make. I've got a Russian T-34, probably going to do a KV2 as well because I like the look of that thing's big old turret. I learned a few things doing this. There's still a few areas of like print damage that I probably should have repaired but didn't. See some around the back. This thing at the front here, I feel like that's damage, but I'm not 100% sure what that's meant to look like anyway. Probably could fix that up at a later date. Yeah, let me know what you think, if you enjoyed it, if this was useful to you at all, and I will see you in the next one. Okay, so if you want to use this as an actual painting guide, here's a quick summary for you. You'll need Grey Seer spray prime, contrast Black Templar, regular paints, Dawnstone, Administratum Grey, Rhinox hide, Mornfang brown, lead belcher, Abaddon black, and Steel Legion drab. You'll also need Nuln oil and Agrex Earthshade wash. First, what you do is, after you've printed and cleaned your tank, you prime Grey Seer, base coat the road wheels at this stage with Black Templar, then paint everything except the tracks with Dawnstone. Wash that with Nuln oil, then dry brush or sponge the Dawnstone, back on. Edge highlight that with Administratum Grey. Paint the tracks and any tools and stowage items with Rhinox Hide. Highlight those tracks and items with Mournfang Brown. Then paint the metal cable, the tow cable, and any metal bits on the tools with Lead Belcher. After that, wash the tracks, the tools, and the armour recesses with Agrax Earthshade. Then pick out the edges of the road wheels with Abaddon Black. Dry brush some Steel Legion Drab around the tracks and the track guards for mud and grime. And then finish off by sponging on some Abaddon Black or Rhinox Hide for paint chipping or wearing. And then you're done.